That introduction took the excitement from the first game and just cranked it to the absolute maximum. I've said it before, but this is one of the most exciting ways to start up any game. The hype continues throughout nearly the entire experience, and that's why Mega Man X2 is my favorite of the X series. Part of what keeps the action so hot is that we immediately start with the dash this time. We're no longer just walking through the intro stage, figuring out the new mechanics of this series. No, you know what these games are about, and here it is, full force. The theme of the intro stage is what really does it. In the Mega Man X3 video, I discussed the differences in the intro stage themes. I mentioned that X2 has a drum part that sounds like a literal speed bag being hit. Pair that with some screaming guitar riffs and you've got an absolutely incredible welcome to one of the greatest sequels ever made. Once we get past our quick intro stage, it's on to the familiar Maverick selection screen. There are numerous different paths in this game. Unlike Mega Man X, where it's pretty much required to start with Chill Penguin, I have seen some different takes on who to start with in this one. For me, I always start with SpongeBob. He's got 2 fairly easy upgrades to obtain, and having an early sub-tank is really nice. Now, as we go through some of these stages, please excuse some of the gameplay. I used to play this game all the time, but it had been a while, and by that I mean probably about 5 to 6 years. There was definitely some rust to shake off, and embarrassingly, I even died to SpongeBob and a few of the other Mavericks. Of course, I'll make myself look better through editing, but I definitely struggled more on this game than I wanted to. I did own this game physically as a kid. Remember, I bought a lot of my original SNES collection around 2009, 2010 when prices were not too bad. I've discussed my old collection in several of my other videos, so be sure to check them out. Currently, I don't have a physical copy of X2 since it's pretty pricey, but dang, I love this game to death, so eventually I will probably bite the bullet and buy it again. There's just so many other financial priorities in life. Oddly enough, I played this game probably the most on the PS2 X collection because it was before the PS4 version came out. There was one summer when I was in college where I was pretty bored, and I decided I wanted to get really good at this game. At one point, I was beating it nearly once a day, I think, and could run through it pretty quickly. Then one night, I watched one actual speedrun of the game and completely gave up on my ambitions to beat this game quickly. A speedrun of this game looks incredibly hard to pull off, but it is damn fun to watch. That's because the game's movement is so fluid and just feels amazing to play. It's quite possibly the only game where I've considered trying to do a speedrun, and that's because moving fast is just always on the mind when playing X2. Well, except for the one part that I absolutely detest about this game. Yeah, I'm sure you were wondering what my big knock is against this game that doesn't make it completely perfect in my eyes. Get ready, brace yourselves, it's Wheel Gator. No, not the fact that his stage shakes around while you're in it, though that did give me motion sickness when I was a kid. What I'm talking about is his actual boss fight. It's horrible. This is a game that encourages speed at almost every moment. Sure, there's things like Magna Centipede's stage where you have to hide from the lights, but you can choose to just blow through them. Crystal Snail's also a little bit slow to fight, but he's not nearly as bad as Wheel Gator. Wheel Gator's fight is the slowest, most tedious boss fight that I can recall from any of the Mega Mans I've played, Classic or X. You have to wait for him to come out of the swamp at the bottom of the screen to hit him. He only pops out for a very brief moment, and it's easy to be late on the timing and just miss altogether. Then it's more and more waiting. While you're waiting, and while jumping like a maniac so he doesn't grab you, he shoots the spike wheel at you and you have to jump away from the wall and back to it quickly. Again, you need to stay high so he doesn't grab you. This pattern is beyond frustrating, and it's absolute hell on your thumb. I dread this fight constantly, and the worst part about it is that since this is Mega Man, you have to do it twice. Yes, you can hit him multiple times with the strike chain, but this timing is outrageously hard to pull off. At least for me. I know that you're writing a comment right now about how easy this is for you, but it's difficult for me. The rest of the game's fine. Wait, no. It's much more than fine. It's perfect. Sorry, I almost forgot the narrative there for a second. Another reason why this game is so fun feeling is because of how powerful the arm part is. The next boss I go for is Overdrive Ostrich, who, by the way, has an incredible desert theme to his stage. Something about it just sounds so arid, and it truly works with the atmosphere. Now, I don't have his weakness right now, but I need to be here because of the X-Hunters. So let's address that really quickly. I don't mind the X-Hunters at all, and I think they add a lot of variety to the game. If you're not familiar with them, there's some extra bosses that grant you the parts to 0 if you beat them, and then you get rewarded at the end of the game for beating them all. Usually, I do opt to beat them because the reward's pretty awesome, but it is totally optional. You do have to go out of your way a little bit to go and beat them, and maybe fight some bosses without their weaknesses. However, the replayability of X2 then is super high because of the X-Hunters. You can choose to beat them or not, or only beat a few of them if you want to, only beat like 2 out of 3, if that's your thing. That's why I picked X2 as a game I would want while stranded on a desert island, which I have talked about on my podcast, which will be linked. Even though you may be thrown off the traditional weakness path because of the X-Hunters, you're still equipped with a devastating arm cannon in X2. I'm able to beat Big Bird here pretty easily without his weakness. A lot of the other frustrating moments I had in this playthrough can be chalked up to me sucking at the game. For example, I absolutely blew it on the speed bike section of this stage every time, and oh my goodness did I struggle on Bubble Crab stage for some reason. I know that all these things are user error though, because I've had much cleaner runs of this game in the past. What makes that all so alluring though is that it entices you to practice the game over and over and over again, master that speed bike segment or those tricky jumps in Bubble Crab's stage. Now, Bubble Crab's theme might not be outrageously fast like some of the others. But it completely fits the aquatic ambience. Wait, no, not that aquatic ambience. It still has some pretty fast drums, as usual. In the discussion of movement, jumping around at insane heights and distances in this stage is absolutely phenomenal and just adds even more to the argument that it is simply a joy to just move around in X2. Speaking of movement, our next boss fight is Flame Stag, and his weapon allows for even more possibilities. The charged speed burner gives us an additional air dash. So not only did this game innovate with giving us the air dash itself, they went ahead and said, you know what, give him 2. It's an incredibly fun power-up and unlocks many of the game's secrets. Every time you pull off a double air dash with it, you feel pretty dang cool. I don't have a ton to say about Morph Moth's stage. It's pretty standard, we have some mini bosses and such. This one might be one of the more forgettable stages in the game. However, the boss fight is very unique. When do regular Mavericks ever have 2 forms? I think that's pretty cool. So, right now we're approaching the end of the regular stages, and I've now defeated all the X-Hunters and acquired all the parts for Zero. To explain the whole backstory of us needing to save Zero, we do have some cutscenes. If you've followed along with any of my other videos, you know I just blow past these and could not care less. Maybe you thought my big gripe about this game was the cutscenes going in. However, they aren't too egregious in this game. Just hold down that A button or X button or whatever button as hard as you can and get on with it. Anyways, time for our last few Mavericks. I've said it before, Magnus Centipede's theme absolutely rips, especially the breakdown with the wicked fast drums. It still gets me hyped up. And yeah, I usually give up on the stealth aspect of this stage. How could I ever bother being stealthy with a theme like this playing in the background? We get to use our charged speed burner here too for some of the upgrades. Yes, I did have to do some backtracking in this run, and this is one of my arguments for liking a lot of the classic Mega Man games more than the X series. However, it's not too bad here, and I know it's possible, though difficult, to do X2 without any backtracking. Like I said though, I'm pretty rusty right now. Our last regular stage is Crystal Snail, who has one of the hardest heart pieces in the game to get. However, I'll make the argument that this is kind of a fun thing. Pulling off the insane jumps in X2 really shows how this game pushed the envelope compared to X1. The Storm Eagle jump or the Flame Mammoth jump are nothing compared to what you have to do for some of the upgrades in X2. When I was a kid, of course, my favorite theme was Magnus Centipede. But as an adult with a little more of a refined palette, I gotta say, Crystal Snail's theme has totally won itself as a top contender for me, especially with that xylophone part. It has such a unique sound, and again, it's very analogous of the general artwork of the stage. It feels very Crystal-esque. X2's soundtrack really kicked it up a notch from X1 in terms of tempo. The themes are typically faster and come off maybe a little more serious. X3 had the ultra serious, downtrodden soundtrack, and I would say X2 is somewhere in between 1 and 3. With that, we are on to the first of the final stages. I'll note that there's not the absolute slap in the face like the first game did with the mood shift in the music. It's much more subtle here, but the first X Hunter theme is a bit more jovial sounding than a lot of the Maverick themes. Look at something like Flame Stag's theme compared to this one. So X2 and X3 have a similar shift in mood, whereas X1 took the uplifting Maverick themes and said, no more messing around. We've talked about that a ton on this channel. The soundtrack does have a significant mood shift as you progress through the final stages. That second X Hunter theme is one that says, no more messing around. A lot of the best Mega Man games follow the same trajectory in their soundtracks, and it's important to tell the player that they're nearing the end of the game through audio cues. And yes, of course I got the Shoryuken. How could I not get the Shoryuken? Anyways, it's time to finish up the game. With the Shoryuken, some of the final bosses go down no problem. Finally, we get our reward for beating all the X-Hunters and retrieving all the Zero parts. We don't have to do this insanely hard boss fight. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever actually even fought Zero because he's really difficult and I like beating the X-Hunters. Pair that then with the amazing theme that we get when Zero comes in and saves the day, and it certainly is worth beating those X-Hunters. So, there we have the game and some of my memories with it. Now let's discuss how those who will come after us will be able to play and remember this amazing game. Preservation efforts for Mega Man X2 are pretty similar to the first game. I'll get this out of the way first though. I completely forgot that X1 was on the SNES Classic, and this was pointed out to me numerous times in comments. Sorry for missing that, but it does go to show you how well preserved X1 truly is. I didn't even cover all the elements of its preservation, and I still said it had super low historical risk. X2 appears on both collections mentioned in the previous video. We have the PS2 and GameCube one from 2006, and then the version that you're looking at here from 2018 on the PC and several modern consoles. The preservation of the boxes and manuals are pretty similar as well. No, there's no scan on Nintendo's website this time, and that's because it's not on the SNES Classic. So, we are taking to our grassroots preservation efforts again for the scans. But hey, it's a Mega Man game, so people are going to care about it and preserve it. However, I will note that the manuals are a lot easier to find than the back of the box for whatever reason for pretty much any of these games. Despite that, overall, it's not at much risk of being lost just because Nintendo doesn't have some official scan or anything on their website. Probably the biggest issue with preserving X2 comes in the actual cartridge. I mentioned that I used to own it when it was not worth more than $100, but sadly it's no longer part of my collection. One thing I have kept though since I was very young is the Nintendo Power poster for the game. That's why the thumbnail has this version of X on it. The Nintendo Power poster is arguably more nostalgic for me than the box art itself. I had this thing hung up right next to my bed for the longest time, and so I saw it every day for many years of my life. Also, X just looks so much better here than on the actual box, so yes, I use this guy for the thumbnail. Overall, I would say X2 has slightly higher historical risk than X1, but it's still very low in the grand scheme of things, and this game will not be forgotten for generations to come. As always, one thing we need to do is to continue talking about this game on the internet and in person with people, and just spreading the word and spreading preservation efforts for these phenomenal games. Keeping up with our box and manual scans, keeping those updated online, making sure that links work, things of that nature, and encouraging game companies to keep doing re-releases as time moves on and as time becomes appropriate to do another re-release, like how we saw with the PS2 version being updated with the PS4 version. So yeah, you heard me say my piece about the box art for this game. It still looks pretty cool. X just looks like he was under a tanning bed, or maybe he got some sun in the Overdrive Ostrich stage, which is where you use that speed bike. Otherwise, the in-game color palette is pretty similar in a lot of ways to that of X1 or X3. Some stages really pop out nicely like crystal snails. However, I'll sound like a broken record here and just reiterate that I just like Mega Man 7's color palette more than any of the X games. So anyways, as always folks, it is time to take a look at the back of the box and the manual. Alright, I actually have a bevy of box art here for you. So we have American, I believe that's, European, and then Japanese, where we have Rockman X2. You can see all the fronts and the backs, pretty great stuff. Thanks, shout out to Launchbox for this guy. Not sponsored in any way, but this is a really good database right here for all the box arts. So anyways, we know the front, we've seen that, but let's take a look over here at the back of the box. So the one thing I want to point out, of course, is the yellow highlight here. X returns for twice as much intensity, and boy, they were not kidding with that one. And we see some good screenshots here. They really pushed this speed bike thing, evidently, because we have him here again, and then they do show Overdrive Ostrich's stage. And I've mentioned it before that a lot of old games show some pretty late screenshots. This is one of the kind of close to the end of the game bosses here, and they just have it. So yeah, anyways, just when Mega Man X thought he had brought down all the X Hunters, several months later an uprising moves from within an abandoned factory. While 8 all-new X Hunters occupy Mega Man X, a triple threat plots to resurrect a secret weapon that is all too familiar. The good Dr. Light supplies Mega Man X with incredible new abilities hidden in capsules buried deep below the surface. And with new vehicles like the mobile attack cycle, plus powers he gains from all the X Hunters, Mega Man X will be ready to face his destiny as a Maverick Hunter. Now it's all or zero for Mega Man X. You gotta love that. That's really great little blurb there, great little pun. And we just see, some additional bullet points there. So, pretty cool back of the box for sure. Definitely gets you hyped to play it. Moving over to the manual here, we do have a manual scan from the Manual Project, I believe this website's called, where I got this from. So, out of all 3 of the X games, this one's definitely the least involved. The third one had that awesome website. The first one had all the journal entries. This one is pretty dang short. You can see only 18 pages. That's pretty small, especially for SNES. That's kind of more of the NES size of the manuals, but you gotta like that little page number right there. That's pretty good. So, safety precautions, getting started, whatever. At least we have some cool artwork here. This is that fish from Bubble Crab stage. He's a real pain. So, moving on. The part that I want to highlight the most right here, and probably the most interesting thing in the whole manual, is this newspaper cutout. Again, I do love that, where they have the little cutouts. So, the future times. Extra, read all about it. Reploid elimination not completed. So, from Bradbury K. Wells, Times staff writer. A new uprising is imminent in the battle to contain the Maverick Reploids that have broken away from their control center. Once believed to be completely contained, these Mavericks have been detected in an abandoned production factory, according to an intelligence report by well-known scientist Dr. Kane. A special armada of Maverick Hunters was mobilized today to the production factory, but only one Reploid has been able to penetrate the heavy artillery outside the factory. Known as Mega Man X, this same Reploid has been primarily responsible for the apparent elimination of the threat 6 months ago. According to Dr. Kane's report, now Mega Man X will battle the Mavericks in an attempt to locate and destroy the leader of this new uprising. And then we see the intro here. That's a good way to throw in a little screenshot. Mega Man X races to the abandoned Reploid factory today. Pretty neat. I think it's cool. I like that they throw in a little something cute like that. It's basically what the back of the box said as well, so, but it's fun, right? So, anyways, we guys have some how to play the game kind of stuff for the rest of it, really. Weapon select, armor capsules, special vehicles, yeah, the mobile attack cycle, or as I call it, the speed bike, whatever. They really push this thing pretty heavily in the advertisement of the game, at least. And then, the ride armor from the first game. We don't have the ride armor parts yet. That didn't happen until the third one. Do have our Maverick list here. I think some of them are a little bit better than some of the ones from the first game. Boomer Kawanger, like, what the heck is that? But then again, what the hell is SpongeBob doing in this game? So, whatever. Anyways, that's about it for the manual. It's pretty short. We do have, I'm sure that all these are worth $1 million now. We have some good Mega Man toys here. That's a pretty cool advertisement right there. So, and you see strategy notes with that intro stage boss. So, pretty simple, short manual, but I still like it. So, it's got that charm to it for sure. Playing X2 again felt like coming home. It had been a long time, but I still totally had some muscle memory with a few parts of the game. I can truly confirm that this is my favorite of the SNES trilogy. So with that, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.